Hello everyone, welcome back to the Java tutorial series. In this video, we will learn about parameterized constructor in Java. We will understand what they are, why we use them, how to create them, and we will see multiple examples. So by the end of this video, you will be able to initialize objects with different values using parameterized constructors. So let's get started. So first question is, what is parameterized constructor? So parameterized constructor, unlike default constructor, a parameterized constructor receives value when an object is created. So these values are called parameters. Okay. So here in the class example, this is an example, we can see here, these are the parameter. This is what parameterized constructor. Okay, this is parameterized constructor. So whenever the object will create, so this method constructor will get called of these parameters. So these values are called parameters. This allows each object to have its own unique data. So whatever values we will provide while object creation, let's say new class name, and in the parenthesis will provide some data. Okay, let's say we have data type as int and int. So I can provide 10, 20, and similarly, let's say I can provide different values 30, 40. So two objects will get created, one with values 10 and 20, another with values 30 and 40. So it allows each object to have its unique data. Okay, so with the help of parameterized constructor, we can have the different objects with unique data set. Okay, and here it is written, it is used to initialize objects with different values. So see here, these are different values, and it is initialize object. When it is initializing object at the time of object creation. So see here we are using new keyword, that means object creation. So during object creation, object is getting initialized. How? With the help of parameterized constructor. Okay, now next question comes, why do we need a parameterized constructor? Is there any way without parameterized constructor we can achieve these things? So yes, there is a way, but the problem is the code will be more. Okay, how? So we need to create object first. So we are looking at without a parameterized constructor. So without using any parameterized constructor, how we will assign the value to the property of an object? Okay, so first step is to create an object, then value we will assign after object creation. So more code will be there, and there is a possibility after object creation we may forget to initialize. Okay, and if we are using with parameterized constructor, so during object creation only the data will be initialized. What it is written, object and data initialized together in the same line. So this is one advantage. During object creation only data will get initialized. Here data means properties of an object. Okay, so in the same line it is happening means less code. We don't need to write more lines of code for assigning values, and cleaner code, better object initialization. So this is looks like some optimization. Okay, and preferable. Now you imagine creating a student object. Okay, And instead of creating object first and assigning values separately, we can pass all required values directly while creating the object. Okay, how? So while creating object, we will use syntax like new student object creation. Okay, new student, and we can pass the values, whatever values we want, we can pass in the parameter. So this values will be going into parameterized constructor, and during object creation, data will get initialized. Okay, so we should follow the parameterized constructor. Okay, let's go to IntelliJ and see one example so we'll have better clarity. Okay, so what we are reading about parameterized constructor. Okay, so let me create one new class called student. Okay, I am creating one new class called student. So this is class. Okay, and we already know that one class will have properties and behaviors. Okay, behaviors means methods. These two things will be present in the class. So I am defining properties, let's say int id and string name. So these two are the properties. Okay, oops. Okay, now it looks good. Okay, now behavior. Okay, we'll define one behavior also, one method also, void display. What it will do, it will simply, I will simply print the id and the name. Okay, id plus I will give one space and then name. Okay, so this is behavior, one of the behavior of the student class. Now I want to define parameterized constructor. Why I want to define parameterized constructor? So that if we create an object of this class and during object creation, if we pass value of the property id and name, so for that object, value should be assigned during object creation only. Okay, so let's define the parameterized constructor. So we don't have return type, name will be same as the class name, and it will take input as parameter. What input? Int id comma string name. See here, id and name are what? Variable name. You can modify it to anything. Okay, let's say you can modify it. This is variable name, nothing to do with property name. Okay, so this is the parameterized constructor. Parameterized constructor. Why parameterized constructor? Since we are taking parameters in the constructor. Okay, now what we will do inside parameterized constructor, we will assign these values to the properties of the current object. What is the current properties? Id and name. Id equals to I, name equals to n. Okay, so that way we have defined parameterized constructor. Now okay, I will define one main method so that we can run the program. Okay, say public static void main string array arguments. Okay, now defined. So inside this main method, now I will create an object of student class. Let's say student s1 equals to new. When I am using new keyword means object will create in this line. So object creation will happen, new student, and during object creation I want that value should be assigned. So I will pass values as an argument. Since here I have defined parameterized constructor, first value should be integer, okay? So I will pass some integer, let's say 10, comma, and second value should be string. Let's say IVK, okay? Now, what will happen in this line? Since we are using new keyword, object will get created, and this object will have two properties, ID and name. And what are the values assigned to those properties, ID and name? So for that, we are passing values ID and name. Now the question comes, we have passed the values, but how that these values will be assigned to the properties of this object, ID and name? So the answer is parameterized constructor. So inside parameterized constructor, these values will be assigned to the property of this object. Okay. So properties is assigned. How we will verify? So we will call the display method. We have defined here display method. What it will do? It will print the ID and name of the current object. What is the current object? S1. S1. We can call the method using dot operator. So this object we are calling dot display. S1 is what? Reference variable, where it is referring to this object. So we will get the details of this object using display method. Let's verify. So in the output we can see 10 space wiki, right? See, we have print first ID, then space, then name. Same 10 comma 10 space wiki. So that's how we are utilizing parameterized constructor to do the data initialization during object creation. Data initialization during object creation using parameterized constructor. Okay. So here the constructor accepts two parameters. The first parameter initializes the student ID and the second parameter student name. So whenever the object is getting created, these values are automatically stored into the property ID and name. Okay. Now let me take one more example, student S2. Okay, one more student I am taking, and for this again object creation, and during object creation we are initializing data. So we need to pass the data. So let's say 20 comma Rahul. Okay. Now we need to verify whether these values are assigned to the property of this object or not. So we'll call the display method. Okay. What we are doing in display method, just printing the ID and name, that is property of the object. Which object? S2. Since we are calling S2.display, S2 is the reference variable where it is referring this object. Okay. Let's verify it. So 20 space Rahul. See what we have provided. So during object creation only, data are getting initialized. So you can notice that each object receives different values. Okay. So for first 10 wiki, for second 20 Rahul. The same constructor is called twice with different arguments. Okay. As a result, every object stores its unique information. Okay. So for both object we have different set of data, but we are calling the same parameterized constructor, and with this help of same parameterized constructor, values are getting assigned for two different objects with two different values. Okay. As we already know, what is the difference between parameter and argument? Okay. Parameter, what is parameter? Parameter is variable in a constructor. So whatever we defined in the constructor, this is parameter. Okay. I and n, these are parameter. And what is the argument? The actual values which we are passing, 10 Vicky, these are arguments, 20 Rahul. So whatever the actual value we pass, those are arguments. Okay. So arguments are passed while creating object, whereas parameters are defined when the method is defined or constructor is defined. Okay. So this is a common interview question. What is the difference between parameter and argument? Okay. So parameter is present in the method definition and argument is passed while calling the method or creating the object. Okay. And arguments are the actual values which we pass. Okay. Let's take one more example so that we'll have better clarity. I will take this time as a new class employee. Okay. So this is altogether new class. Here we don't have anything. Okay. Since we have properties and behavior, why I'm writing this again and again, so that you can recall what we have learned so far. Okay. So one class have properties and behaviors. So let's define property for this class. Okay. Int id, comma, string name. Okay, I need to put here semicolon, id, name. Okay, I will define this time one more property, salary. Okay, now I will define constructor. What constructor I will define? Parameterized. So that while object creation, if values are getting passed, so those values should be assigned to the properties. Okay, so int id, comma, string name, comma, double salary. Okay, so this is parameterized constructor. Okay, I will write one comment here, parameterized constructor. Okay, now so when this parameterized constructor will be called during object creation. So during object creation, these values will be passed, id, name and salary. So we will assign these values to the property of the current object. Okay, so id equals to id. What happened? Okay, id equals to id and name equals to name and salary equals to salary. Okay, now you might be confused. What is this id and id? Both are looking same. What is the difference between this id, name, salary? Okay, so this is parameter, right? So parameter can accept any number of parameters. Parameterized constructor can accept any number of parameters. Here the employee constructor receives 3 values. So right hand side is the values which we are getting from parameters, and the left hand side is the current object properties. Current object properties. What is current object? What is current object? I will tell you what is current object. I will define one main method so that we can run the program. Okay, public static void main string array arguments. Okay, so this is main method. Okay, how do we call this parameterized constructor? How do we call the parameterized constructor? During object creation. Okay, so during object creation means object is getting created. So that object will have some properties, right? What properties? id, name, salary. So to refer those properties of this object, we use this keyword. I will repeat. When this parameterized constructor is called during object creation. So that object, while creating, that object will have properties, right? ID, name, and salary. So that property for that object we are setting here. So to refer that object property, we use this keyword. Okay. To refer that object, we use this keyword, and that object dot, using dot operator, we are using property. Let's see example. So student S1 equals to, sorry, not a student, this time we are using employee. Employee E1 equals to new employee. And since we are using parameterized constructor, we will pass values. Let's say ID is 3, name is Vicky, okay, and salary is, let's say, 40,000, okay, double 0.0, I will do 0.0, okay. So at line number 20, object is getting created, and while creating object, we are assigning these values to the property of this object. What are the properties of this object? ID, name, and salary. Since it is employee class has this property, and if we are creating an object of this employee class, so that object will have these properties. And now in the same statement, while creating object, we are assigning these values to that object. So in the parameterized constructor, we are referring to this object using this keyword, this dot ID. So this object has ID, name, and salary. So we are referring this object to using this keyword. So this dot ID, this dot name, this dot salary. So these are in left hand side, object properties are there, and the right hand side of the equals to the value which we are getting from parameters, or you can say the arguments which we have passed from here. So these values are getting assigned to the object properties. And let's say if we want to verify, we will create one method, okay, void display. In this method, what we will do, we'll do nothing. We'll simply print the current object properties values, whatever values it has. ID, give one space, the name, yeah, then salary, okay. Then this is good. Now with the help of object, we will call the display method. So methods are getting called. How do we call methods? With the help of object. E1 dot display. Okay. Now we will run the program and verify it. So see, we have passed this value, and these values are being set for this object properties, that is ID, name, and salary. And then display we are printing ID, name, and salary. See, 3 Vicky and 40,000. It's working fine. So a parameterized constructor can accept any number of parameter, okay. Here we have taken 3 example, okay. Here the employee constructor receives 3 values, and we are using this keyword y to distinguish instance variable. Where is the instance variable? Okay, instance variable from constructor parameters. Constructor parameters are this one, right hand side, and this is instance variable, okay, this one. Instance is nothing but the object, okay. Whatever object we are getting created, we are referring as instance. So these are what? Instance variables, okay. ID, name, and salary are instance variables. Now we will see the benefits. What are the advantages? So parameterized constructor makes object creation easier. Every object starts with meaningful values, okay. So here what it is written, initializes object immediately. Immediately means during object creation. Okay, don't get confused with the object creation and initialization. Creation means what? Object will get created in the heap memory. I hope you remember. Okay, object will get created in the heap memory. So this is what object. What is the meaning of initialization? Initialization means this object will have properties, right? ID, name, age. How do we know that object will have property? Because object is getting created from the class. Class is a blueprint and object is the byproduct of this class. So in the class we will be having blueprint, what properties, what behaviors this object will be having. The same properties it will have, like ID, name and age. So these properties will get initialized. Initialized means will be assigned with some values. Okay, so this assignment of values to this property value of the object is known as initialization. Okay, so what it is telling, initializes object during object creation. So when the object is getting created in the heap memory, on the same time values are getting assigned to the properties of an object. Okay, now what it is saying, different objects can store different values, correct? No, this is first object. Likewise we will create another object. For that also we will having different properties, ID, name and age. So values can be different, right? For this one 20, Rahul 40, values can be different. So that's what it is telling, different values. Then reduces extra setter code. It means during object creation we are assigning values to the properties. So no need to work on extra lines of code to assign values. So how these values are getting assigned? With the help of parameterized constructor. And if we don't use parameterized constructor, then we need to create object first. Then after object creation, we will assign values. For that, we need to write extra lines of code. So that's what it is telling, extra lines. It is reducing extra lines of code. And since we are using this thing, the concept of parameterized constructor, it is cleaner and more readable code. And it ensures required data is provided. How it ensures? With the help of number of parameters in the parameterized constructor. Okay. Now we will see the difference between default constructor and parameterized constructor. We already studied about default constructor and parameterized. Okay. So with default constructor has no parameters. Okay, no parameters will be there in the default constructor. Whereas in the parameterized constructor we'll be having one or more parameters. So this is an important point. Second point says initializes default values. So since constructor has no parameters, what value it will assign to the properties of an object? It will assign default values. If it is int, it will assign 0. If it is a string, it will assign null. Likewise, for all data types, whatever default values is there, so those default values will get assigned to the properties of an object during object creation. And for parameterized constructor, initializes custom values. Why custom values? Because by object creation only, we will pass the values. What values should be assigned during object creation? So those values will be assigned with the help of parameterized constructor, because those values will be transferred to the parameters in the parameterized constructor, and those values will get assigned to the properties of the object. Now third point is same initial values. Okay, same initial values. And what is telling different values for every object? It means we are creating n number of objects. Let's say we are creating two objects. Okay, so for these two objects, the values of the properties of the object will be same. Why same? Because for both objects, the values will be default only. So same initial values for whatever number of objects we are creating using default constructor. And for parameterized constructor, different values for every object, because for every object creation line, we are passing different values for each object. So those values will get assigned for that object. Okay. It is simple initialization. Why simple? Because default values are getting assigned to the property of the object. And flexible initialization, we have the flexibility to pass values during object creation. Pass values, it can be 10, 20, 30, 40. So we can pass different set of values and we can create n number of objects. So we have flexibility here. Okay. So important points we need to remember. So constructor name should match with the class name. Constructor has no return type. Okay. And can accept any number of parameters. Parameterized constructor, it can have any number of parameters and it will called automatically when object is created. When object is created, when we use new keyword. And what is the purpose of this constructor we are studying? It is used for object initialization. What is object initialization? Assigning values. Object initialization is assigning values to the properties of an object. Okay, so if object is getting created, object will have values like ID, name, age. So these are properties. Object will have properties, and for those property we should have value. So those values will get assigned when? During object creation. So this is the main purpose, object initialization. Of what? Of constructor. So let's quickly summarize what we have learned so far. So we have seen what is parameterized constructor, why do we use it, what is the syntax. We have also seen the examples. We have seen what is object initialization. We have seen parameters and arguments difference. And also we have seen the advantages of using parameterized constructor. So that's all for this video. I hope this tutorial helped you understand parameterized constructor. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.